Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Well, joining us today, our annual visit with Sarah Otte Coleman, the director of the North Dakota Tourism. Sarah, first off, as we start, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I have been marketing the state of North Dakota in one way or another for over 30 years, so 31 years now. I've
Wow.
been with the state. I've been a state director for over 15, and prior to that, I was with the Bismarck-Mandan Convention and Visitors Bureau doing various marketing functions and operations functions there. So it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's never the same thing. No day's the same, no year's the same. There's always new stories to tell and new marketing materials and channels to use, and so it's fun.
So you've been doing marketing, but where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Bismarck, so I grew up in North Dakota, graduated, from Century High School in Bismarck, home of Carson Wentz and Cara Mund, I'll say. And so yeah, and then I went to college and went back, and we farm and ranch just north of Bismarck, so that kind of keeps you home.
Yeah, and I understand a couple of twins are about to venture to college.
They are, yep. My babies are off to college next year.
Well, tell them good luck. Sarah, big summer coming, after kind of maybe a rough winter. Didn't think it was ever going to get here. Talk about some of the highlights, in tourism this summer in North Dakota. Yeah,
we're all ready for summer, right? In fact, I think some of us are go ahead and skip right through spring since it came late and go straight to summer. So there's a couple fun things coming up this summer. I mean, there's hundreds of fun things, but a couple notable ones are the International Peace Gardens is celebrating their 85th anniversary. So I know a lot of people, it's our nickname, for our state, and yet a lot of people have never been there. So this would be a great opportunity to do that. They've got special festivities July 14th and 15th, but year-round, or all through the summer, they have concerts with the music camp and different events throughout there. In addition to the sculptures and the flowers, they have one of the largest succulent and cactus collections in the world. So that's kind of a unique place to go. Theodore Roosevelt National Park, of course, is always number one attraction in terms of numbers and visitation, but they're 40 years old this year. So that's another great option to visit. One of the biggest trends that you're seeing nationwide is the growth in paddle sports. So, and I think it's because it's affordable, right? People can get into paddle sports a lot more affordable than you can buy a motorboat or something, much more expensive. And so there's a lot of opportunities statewide to even rent before you buy. And get out, and whether it's a stand-up paddleboard or a kayak or a canoe, you can do it just north here in the Pembina Gorge area. There's rentals available there. There's rentals available at a lot of the state parks. Downtown Grand Forks, they've got the boathouse on the Red. You can do it right there. Paddle On Adventures in Bismarck has it where you can do it on multiple bodies of water, the river and another lake outside of Bismarck. So lots of opportunities for that. So that might be something to check out as well.
Yeah, you're right. Paddle sports really have, I guess, with the big boards. It's taken off, it seems like, in the last few years. So.
Yeah, it's so relaxing. It's just fun.
I've never done one of those, so maybe I need to try that this year.
Put it on your list.
What were numbers like in 2017, and kind of what do you expect for this year?
Our numbers were down a little bit last year in terms of attraction visitation. Some of that was fueled by a couple of things, I think, that caused that. Obviously, the Canadian border crossing numbers continue to be down. That dollar just doesn't want to even out like we would like it to. So those Canadian border crossings were down about 10% again this year. So that hurt us. And then you just have a little bit of decreased traffic with, both oil and agriculture were down. And so with that comes less business travel and less of that activity. So we were down a little bit in terms of attraction visitation, but yet pretty solid in a lot of other areas. Visitor centers were up a little bit. When you looked at the revenue streams, so the taxes generated, they were down a little bit. Arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodations, and foods were down just a little bit, but I'd say overall pretty flat. So we feel like we've kind of turned the corner and are looking forward to a really good summer. Early indications are we're getting a lot of requests for information. Our early advertising materials are generating interest and responses. Our arrivals are up, which we measure if folks interact with our digital advertising on a phone or an iPad. We can measure when they arrive into the state, and so those numbers are up. And so we're confident that we're going to have a good summer.
You know, how do you count a visit? I mean, do you have to be from out of state to be counted? Because when we traveled to Medora or Theodore Roosevelt, am I a visitor there and counted?
Well, you would be a visitor to Medora, of course. They'd be thrilled to have you. And you would also be part of the travel and tourism industry. So when we talk about the impact of the industry, we have a couple different ways to measure that, but it's in excess of $3 billion that are spent by visitors in the state. So, but yet when we talk about, like when we measure the impact, we're able to break that down. So about 68% of our visitors and visitor dollars were spent from other states. And then there's another 9–10% that are spent internationally. And then that leaves, you know, the remaining 20, whatever percent is North Dakotans traveling within North Dakota.
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, what about motel availability this year? I mean, with what's been built, there ought to be some opportunities, it seems like.
There are. You can get great deals on hotels and new nice hotels statewide. So, yeah, for a number of years we saw the strongest growth of hotel properties in the country, and you know, have well over 10,000 new rooms that have been built in the last few years. You know, we're seeing it statewide from small towns to big cities, east to west. So it really is an opportunity. It's a buyer's market for people who are vacationing and looking for good deals on hotels.
Sure. What about gas prices? I mean, throughout the years, gas prices have been up and down. They seem to be high, maybe going to be high this year. How does that affect your numbers and people coming to North Dakota?
You know, it's always a concern. I think people have gotten very used to low gas prices, and so I think it's kind of a shock for some people. But in some ways, it's an advantage to us because we market so close to our borders. You know, our marketing has to be close because we just don't have a ton of money to spend. So we focus mainly on Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then we go into the Chicago markets, and then into Canada, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan mainly. So for those folks, you know, it's not going to be a deal breaker. I think you're talking about a $10 difference right now from a round trip between Minneapolis and Bismarck and back with the price from last year compared to this year. So, and we try to communicate that. We've got a calculator on our website so people can say, it's not a deal breaker, just skip one cup of coffee.
Well, you were talking about that earlier. And coffee's gotten to that point, I think. Okay, let's talk about some different things here. I got a number of things we want to highlight and talk about. How about Teddy Roosevelt's Maltese Cross Cabin? Man, I don't think we've talked about that on this show.
Yeah, you know, I kind of think of that as his starter home, right? So when he first came out here, that was the cabin. It was really basically a hunting cabin that he lived in, and so that it has an interesting history. It has the original logs in it that it had back when he was president. Or back before he was president. And then when he was president, that cabin actually went to the World Fair in St. Louis. Then it went out to Portland for the centennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Yep. And then it was in Fargo for a while. Then it was on the Capitol grounds, and now it's finally home, back at the Badlands and right in the footsteps.
Where is it located? Yeah.
Yep. It's right before you go into the national park by Medora. Yep. So yeah, so it's an interesting cabin. You know, after he then built the Elkhorn Ranch site after that, which was north of Medora, and then that replaced that cabin when he moved out there. And that site actually has seen really a lot of interest, a lot more traffic. I've been told that I talked to the National Park Superintendent, and she said that the interest in the Elkhorn has been strong.
Yeah, and of course I hear stories about a library, and we won't talk about that though right now.
Stay tuned on that one, right?
Yeah, really. What about other things? You talk about Medora and Theodore Roosevelt National Park. What will people see when they go there?
Well, the beauty of the park is that you can be as active or as passive as you want to be. You know, I mean, you can just really enjoy a leisurely drive through the park and you know, go early in the morning or later and enjoy the wildlife. The horse numbers are strong. The buffalo, you're going to see a lot of wildlife throughout the park. You can hike. There's a number of hiking trails, all the way from, you know, really pretty easy trails to the more treacherous trails. Of course, if you want to do mountain biking, you know, you can't do that in the park, but the Mattahey Trail just kind of goes adjacent to it, and so that's a great opportunity for mountain biking as well up there. You know, but then the beauty is that you've got all the amenities that Medora offers too, right at the footsteps, or Watford City if you're in the North Unit. So in the South Unit, you've got you know, all the activities and attractions in Medora, the Cowboy Hall of Fame, and of course the musical and the nightly Pitchfork Fondue and the amenities, and then Bully Pulpit. And then Watford City has such great experiences there as well. You know, great biking, hiking in the North Unit. As well as all the new amenities that they have in Watford City, great hotels, great restaurants, you know, great little visitor center with a museum in there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Bully Pulpit being a golf course, for people who might not know that. They should.
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about some of the upcoming events. Fargo Marathon, you know, a lot of things we talk about out west are beautiful and happening, but how has the Fargo Marathon done for you, and how huge has that become?
Oh, it's been a tremendous addition to the state and to the Fargo-Moorhead area. I mean, when you look at the numbers, I think they're at about 285,000 people have run that since it began, mm-hmm. and I think they're from 21 countries. So it's a great reason to bring people to North Dakota. And what you'll hear if you're around you know, during that weekend, people are surprised. You know, they had no idea what to expect, and they're surprised, and they love the people, and they love the, you know, the feel of the town. And I think it really probably generates a lot of return trips. You know, it's gotten some great publicity. Obviously, it helps that it's flat and it's early because it's such a great qualifying race and one of the top for that. So that really helps garner more runners from across the country and world.
Yeah, well, Fargo has done an excellent job building that up. How about the Mandan Rodeo Days?
So that is one of the longest running rodeos in the country. It's been well over 100 years, over 125 in fact. They celebrated that a few years ago. So it is, it's just a kind of a tradition. I mean, not only is it a great rodeo, world-class rodeo, they bring in the best clowns and the best announcers and the best bands to go along with it and to add to that atmosphere, but it's also part of a bigger festival. They've got art in the park going on, they've got parades, they've got street dances, they have, you know, it's kind of a big, small town feel. So it's, yeah, if you haven't been to Mandan Rodeo Days, it would definitely be worth a trip over the 4th of July.
Well, and then what about Skyfest over Fort Stevenson?
Kites,
what is that?
Right? Well, kites. We have wind in North Dakota, in case you didn't know.
We do.
Yeah, so there's a few different kite festivals, but the one at Fort Stevenson is always Memorial Day weekend, and just a great way. You know, sometimes Memorial Day isn't quite nice enough to get the boat out and to do some of the water sports that you want to do, so it's a great way to get those campers or even day visitors up there and bring the kites out and see a lot of color in the sky.
Well, and as I said, you better have a pretty sturdy kite a lot of days in North Dakota. What about the Devil's Run in June?
That's a car show in Devil's Lake.
Okay.
So one of the biggest car shows, and again, longest running car shows. It attracts people from all over the region. You know, they have, again, a full run of festivities that go along with that, from parades to shows to bands and events. So it's a great event too.
Mm-hmm. And then what about the Badlands Dinosaur Museum?
That has transitioned a little bit in the last few years. The city actually manages that facility now as part of their whole museum park up there. So it's one of a few museums that are located right off of the interstate as you're coming into Dickinson. And they've done some great refurbishing. The staff up there is world renowned. And they do dinosaur digs out of there, and they have 11 full-size replicas. So it's a great stop, great visit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and all kids love dinosaurs. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned your marketing campaigns and whatever, you know, and I understand Josh has renewed his contract.
Yes, we're continuing to work with Josh Duhamel, so we're excited about that. Obviously, he was such a natural ambassador for North Dakota. You know, loves the state and loves to talk about it, and so as an extension to that, we started working with them a few years ago. And so, yeah, so we shot a few more. There are a few more executions that you'll see out there. We were in Grand Forks and Minot last summer, and then he'll be back this summer to do a couple other sites. And so we've extended the use of all the other pieces that we were able to shoot 2 years previous through 2019. So
yeah, and can you even put a number on it? How important is it to have somebody that recognizable by so many different people to be part of your marketing campaign?
It's really hard to put a number on that. It opens eyes that we would have not gotten, before. You look at the network that they have and he has on social media and the following that he has, different people from different parts of the country. It really is hard to measure. And the other piece of that is that, a lot of tourism marketing is about inspiring and inspirational. And if you can tell a story and have somebody tell your story, you're going to stand out a little bit from some of the other tourism advertisements.
Mm-hmm, sure. Well, let's talk about the oil production. Has the decline in oil production had an impact on tourism? Because I guess that could be good or bad for tourism, because people might have shied away with everything that was going on.
Yeah, I think we're past that because of all the infrastructure that has been built up, but yet sometimes we'll be out and people will still think that the traffic's bad and the hotels are all full. So, there's always that communication challenge out there. But I think where it hurts a little bit is, again, that business travel is down a little bit. You don't have the commuters. But I don't think it'll ever be to the point that it was before, because the housing has caught up. So really that is an opportunity to fill those rooms with, those weekly business travelers and then the leisure travelers. So yeah, it's just an education piece and letting people know that we have things available and rooms are available and that the traffic isn't bad, and we've built these pull-offs and all the infrastructure has been improved so that when it does rebound, visitors are still going to have a great experience.
Sure. Well, how important is the state fair and, well, for that matter, all the county fairs?
They're kind of a tradition of summer, right? I mean, there are a lot of people that maybe don't go every year, but there are the people that do, and so I think it's one of those kind of summer things that people look forward to. The state fair is a huge event in terms of numbers. They draw very well, with concerts every night and entertainment every evening. Have historically drawn really well from Canada and outside of North Dakota, in addition to, of course, the great local entertainment that it has for all the people who show cattle and do all those other events at the fair. So yeah, that was one of the sites that we shot. We did some photos of with Josh Duhamel last summer. It was during the fair.
Oh, well, good. What about any new things or maybe publicity things you're trying out this year? Anything different?
Yeah, we always try to tweak our media plan. We really measure what worked, what worked the best, what executions, what order, and so every year there are tweaks in how we market the state. But one of the cool additions that we did this year is we added, in Minneapolis a little earlier because of the Super Bowl, we wrapped the train. And so for 8 weeks, you saw a North Dakota Legendary train, and that was through the Super Bowl. And actually, that blue line was the only that day of the Super Bowl. It was only transporting people to and from. But of course, a lot of people that don't even have Super Bowl tickets come, the week or 10 days prior for the festival and festivities around that. So that was a fun addition. We saw a lot of posts on social media with people, that were taking pictures by the train, and hopefully that opened a lot of people's eyes and got them thinking more about North Dakota. The other thing that we're doing, and we're kicking it off, is the North Dakota Travel Matters series. So we're just kind of doing short little videos, really telling the story of the people who make up the travel and tourism industry. So, traditionally when you think about the industry, you might think of an outfitter or, somebody who works at the Medora Musical or somebody who works in a hotel. But we're showcasing all the other folks that work to serve as visitors in our state. And so not only does it open people's eyes to the impact and the breadth of the industry, but it also gives those insider tips. Like if somebody's coming, it's fun for them to see something from the brewery or the coffee shop or the actual interpreter at that historic site. Mm-hmm. So those are being released this summer.
So what about some of the various forts throughout the state?
Military history obviously is a big part of North Dakota, and we have them kind of scattered throughout the state. Some of the big ones have really rich interpretive programs and experiences. Of course, Fort Abraham Lincoln is the one that initially comes to mind because they have the cavalry history as well as the infantry history all right there. The Custer House is there. And that, they tell just a great story with the interpretation and the buildings out there. Fort Abercrombie out here, out east, is another great experience. Fort Union up by Williston is another example. That was the largest, basically that was the shopping center of its day. During the fur trading era, it was the biggest hub between Seattle and Minneapolis, or St. Louis rather. Mm-hmm. So they have a great rich history and story, and the fun thing about them is that they're interactive. You can go and really have fun and learn.
So the Custer House is still a big attraction.
Yeah, it is. People are curious about some of those crazy legends of history. And you can certainly, it's certainly fun to step back into that time period and hear about what life was like on the frontier.
Well, speaking of that, what about the Mandan Hidatsa village?
So the Annislant Village at Fort Lincoln is, and that's the other thing, that area is just so interesting because you've got the military, two kinds of military history, and then you've got the Indian Lodge there as well. And, that dates back, 400 years. And there's 5 lodges that are restored that you can kind of walk through and kind of get a peek of what it was like to live in one of the Indian villages. But then there's other sites scattered throughout. You can go north to Double Ditch and see where that village was. And then go north to Knife River Indian Village, National Historic Site north of by Stanton, and that also has an interpretive center and really talks about what life was like during that time.
Mm-hmm. Are there any fun things maybe going on the state capitol grounds this summer?
They do. They have a couple great events throughout. Well, they've got events throughout the year, but the 2 that come to mind initially is they do a fabulous 4th of July. They do the symphony on the Capitol grounds with a fireworks display that's really second to none. They do a really nice job with that. And then they do an art fair. It's called Capitol Affair, and that is usually the first weekend in August. And there it's just arts and crafts vendors and entertainers and whatnot that kind of line the whole mall, and then some of those parking lots in there. So it's kind of a unique setting for that.
When you go to conventions or whatever, what do people think of North Dakota?
It really depends on where you're going. So we work pretty niche-y when we're going out. In a lot of cases, they don't know anything. But if we're working, internationally, they're really interested in the Western heritage. Very interested in the whole cowboy and Indian era. When we go into sport shows, they have a interest in outdoors, and they're looking for hunting and fishing and information on kayaking and some of those things. But yeah, overall, I would say people are surprised at the variety, and they're also surprised at the size of the state and how it varies so much from east to west.
Mm-hmm. So what is the best part of your job?
Telling the stories. I think it's figuring out ways to tell the story. When you're from a state and you're proud of the state, it's just exciting to be able to showcase what you've got. Some of the things that we're seeing build, a lot of our main streets are really booming, and we've got a lot more amenities, in addition to the outdoor recreation and the history. So I think that's one of the fun things that we're selling right now, is the fact that you can get, you have a full menu of amenities that you can enjoy while you're here. And I think the best part is just seeing it change and seeing it evolve.
But it said here, hearing you talk about all this, what are the challenges? Because, you can go to Lake Sakakawea, or you can go to the Theodore Roosevelt Park, or you can run the marathon. So how do you have a campaign that explains all that?
Yeah. Well, we do research that shows which executions work the best and why people come and what they're most interested in. So when we plan our creative campaigns, we really focus in on what those key drivers are. And when you look at it, they break them down into 2 different ways. The research will show what people will do, but then it'll also show what will motivate a trip. So we really try to focus on what will motivate a trip. So for example, we've got fabulous restaurants, breweries, wineries, but they aren't maybe to the James Beard level yet. They're coming, right? But so it might not motivate a trip, yet people are going to spend more money shopping and eating than they are anything else. So it's really finding the mix, finding what motivates, and then pulling them into the website, and then showcasing everything that they can do that'll round off their trip.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're customizing, you're doing that, but if you went to Rhode Island or Florida and you were talking to somebody and they said, yeah, I'd like to visit North Dakota. What is it they need to come and see and experience in North Dakota if they're going to come?
Well, you know, it's so hard. That's a hard question because people really have different interests. So, you know, we got great museums, we've got great outdoor adventure. It really depends on what their specific interest is.
Well, with that said, then, why is North Dakota so special?
Well, I think what you hear time and time again is that people are so impressed with the wide open landscapes. So, you know, you think of a lot of places where you're just in a tunnel of trees and you're not seeing anything. So people comment about the landscapes, the sunsets, the blue skies, and the friendly people. And the other stuff is just what helps, you know, helps fill in their time and gives them the stories and the rich culture that goes along with that.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, if people want more information, where can they go?
They should go to ndtourism.com, and we've got a search function right on there, so they can search by what experience or what part of the state or what they might be interested in.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Always good to be here.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse this week, and as always, thanks for watching.
Funding provided by the members of Prairie Public.